Liberal waitress mocks Elon Musk in a luxury restaurant, not knowing he owned it. The evening air in Silicon Valley was cool and crisp as the Starlight Bistro, the most coveted luxury restaurant in the area, buzzed with quiet energy. Inside, soft golden light from ornate chandeliers flickered off marble floors, casting a sophisticated glow over sleek modern tables. The walls were adorned with contemporary art pieces, each one more expensive than the average person could afford in a lifetime. The hum of rich conversations blended with the soft clinking of fine wine glasses, and the faint sound of classical music played from hidden speakers above, setting the tone for an elegant night out. Despite its high-end clientele, the restaurant's atmosphere was calm and exclusive, catering to the tech moguls, venture capitalists, and famous entrepreneurs who frequented the area. Tonight was no different, except for one small detail that no one knew. Elon Musk had decided to stop by for a quiet dinner. Elon had spent the entire day in meetings about Tesla's latest advancements and SpaceX's upcoming launch. But as dusk fell, he felt the need to unwind. He wasn't looking for attention, nor did he want any reminders of the intense world he inhabited. He wanted simplicity, quiet, and a good meal. Disguised in a simple black t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers, he was just another patron in a sea of wealthy Silicon Valley elites. His presence went unnoticed, which was exactly how he preferred it. He slid into a table by the large window, overlooking the twinkling city below, and scanned the menu. The heady smell of fine French wine, freshly baked bread, and roasted meats filled the air. As he waited for his food, he took a deep breath, allowing himself to relax in the stillness of the space. Meanwhile, Sarah, one of the newer waitstaff at the Starlight Bistro, was moving swiftly between tables. She was known for her fierce opinions, her passion for social justice, and her sharp tongue. Since joining the bistro, she had made her opinions about wealth and inequality clear, especially in conversations with anyone she suspected of being part of the tech elite. Her views were driven by a deep belief that the system was broken, and that Silicon Valley's tech giants like Elon Musk represented everything that was wrong with the world. She had seen enough articles about how these men and women amassed fortunes while the average person struggled to get by. Sarah wasn't interested in small talk or pleasantries. To her, the Starlight Bistro wasn't just a workplace. It was a front-row seat to the ostentatious display of wealth and privilege. The patrons she served, the CEOs and billionaires, were the very people she believed were contributing to the widening wealth gap and environmental destruction. She was ready for her next conversation. As she rounded the corner, her eyes fell on a familiar face. A man seated alone by the window, calmly reading the menu. At first glance, he seemed like just another rich tech mogul, perhaps someone who worked at Apple, Google, or one of the countless other companies that had sprouted up in Silicon Valley. His casual attire didn't tip her off immediately, but she recognized his face from the news, Elon Musk, the poster child for everything she despised. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and frustration. This was it. This was her chance to stand up for what she believed in. She felt an urge to confront him, to challenge him, to say what so many others probably wanted to but never dared to. Without a second thought, she approached his table, steeling herself for the upcoming conversation. Elon looked up from his menu as she approached, and she greeted him with a tight, forced smile. "Good evening, sir. Can I take your order?" Elon, not expecting much from the interaction, smiled back. "Just the steak, medium rare, and a glass of your finest red wine, please." Sarah nodded briskly, jotting the order down on her notepad. She felt a familiar rush, the kind that came when she confronted someone who was part of the problem, as she liked to call it. She had learned to spot them easily: their expensive suits, their lack of concern for the world's problems, their arrogance. This man was no different. But before walking away, Sarah paused. She wasn't going to let him off easy. The moment felt too significant to let slip by without saying something, without making him realize that she wasn't just a waitress. She was someone with a voice, someone with the courage to speak the truth. She leaned in, speaking more sharply than she meant to. "You know, it's a shame," she began, her eyes scanning the elegant surroundings. "The way places like this exist while the world is falling apart. People like you flaunt your wealth, sitting here in your fancy restaurant, sipping wine, while the rest of us are left to deal with the consequences of your actions. Climate change, income inequality, automation. The world is crumbling, and all you seem to care about is making more money. Elon blinked in mild surprise. He hadn't been expecting an attack. Not here, not now. But he was used to people projecting their frustrations onto him. He had heard the arguments about the wealth of tech billionaires, the moral debates, the critiques. He had even engaged in many of them himself over the years. But tonight, he wasn't in the mood to argue. Instead, he studied her face closely. He had no idea what had prompted this outburst, but it seemed like she had been waiting for the right moment to lash out. There was an intensity in her eyes, a kind of fire he had seen before in activists, in those who thought they were right and everyone else wrong. "Excuse me?" he asked calmly, raising an eyebrow. "Are you speaking to me?" Sarah's face flushed with a slight edge of embarrassment but also determination. "Oh, I'm sure you don't need to be told that," she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "But it's time people like you start hearing the truth. You're the ones who make the big decisions, the ones who have all the power, but you don't understand the struggle of everyday people. The environment, the economy, everything is collapsing, and you just keep piling up more money. You're probably just another part of the problem." Elon studied her with a quiet, composed gaze. He wasn't offended. He was intrigued. He had seen it all before. The passionate, the angry, the well-intentioned but misguided. But what struck him was how certain she was. It was the same certainty that many people in his circle had, an unshakable belief that they knew what was best for the world. "Well," Elon said, his voice cutting through her rant, "you do realize you're talking to the owner of this restaurant, right?" Sarah froze. The words took a moment to register in her mind, and for a split second, she thought she had misheard him. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice suddenly quiet, her demeanor faltering. Elon gave a small, knowing smile. "I own the Starlight Bistro," he said casually, his eyes meeting hers with a calm intensity. "You were just lecturing the wrong person." For a few long seconds, the world around Sarah seemed to stop moving. Her face drained of color as she realized what had just happened. She had been pouring out her frustration on the very person who owned the establishment she was working in. The irony hit her like a ton of bricks. She had assumed he was just another billionaire, another symbol of everything wrong with society, but she was wrong. She had misjudged him, and now it was too late to take it back. Her thoughts were a chaotic mess of disbelief and embarrassment. She had tried to make a statement, tried to make a difference, but instead, she had ended up looking foolish. I didn't know," she muttered, the weight of her words settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Elon's face softened. "I get it," he said, his voice now warm and understanding. "A lot of people don't know who I am when they see me in public. They don't see the work I'm doing behind the scenes, or the efforts we're making to address those very problems you care about." He paused for a moment, looking out the window, and then added with a small chuckle, "But hey, I'm just the guy who owns a restaurant." Sarah stood there, frozen, unsure of how to respond. She had meant to make a point, but instead, she had just been called out in front of a stranger. Someone far more important than she had assumed. "I'm really sorry," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean." Elon cut her off, raising a hand. "I know you didn't. No harm done. Just keep it civil next time. Okay?" Sarah nodded, still feeling the sting of her mistake. She quickly turned to walk away, but before she could leave, she glanced back at Elon. "I'll make sure your steak is perfect," she muttered, still embarrassed. Elon smiled softly, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "I'm sure it will be." As Sarah retreated to the kitchen, her mind was spinning. She couldn't believe what had just happened. For all her idealism, all her protests, she had failed to understand the complexities of the world. She had assumed that her anger and frustration would change something, but in the end, she had learned that nothing was as simple as she had thought. For Elon, the encounter was just another moment in his day, another example of how people misunderstood him. He had faced far worse critiques, far more direct confrontations, but this one felt different. It was a reminder that even the most well-meaning individuals could misjudge others, and that often, there was more to a person than what met the eye. As Sarah returned to the kitchen, her thoughts lingered on the conversation. She had learned a valuable lesson that evening, not just about Elon Musk, but about the world in general. It wasn't always about picking sides. Sometimes, it was about understanding the nuances, the hidden layers, and the complexities that shaped people's actions. And so, for the first time in a long while, Sarah left the Starlight Bistro that night not just with a sense of defeat, but with the realization that she had a lot more to learn.